Hi, I'm Kent. In the last several videos, you've seen me making some test tiles. My goal wasn't to really make test tiles, although those will be useful. It was really to dial in my mold making process. So I've been trying to make 3D printed molds to directly cast plaster molds instead of going through a silicone step. I think I got my test tile down and I figured out how to mix up my plaster. That was the last video where I was testing different ratios and mixing times. So now I actually want to scale this up and do a real pot. In particular, I want to do a pot like this. So here is the pot I designed on my computer and 3D printed. This isn't the final version, but it's close. It's got basically the right proportions and similar shapes. And this should be the size of the final pot, taking into account shrinkage, or close to it. You'll notice that this would basically be, one, impossible to throw because it's not round. I also couldn't make a plaster mold of this like I have before, where I was basically taking the pot and just sitting it in, because there's undercuts no matter which way if I put it in right side up or upside down. So this will require a multi-part mold, which is what I've been practicing. And to do so, I wanted to 3D print that mold directly for the plaster. So here are the pieces for that. So first, this here is for the bottom. This shape here is actually the foot of the pot, so it's going to be this piece here. I need the negative of that for the plaster. So here is a mold that I'll be able to pour the plaster in. I made this in 3 different parts. So there are these 2 sidewalls that I will attach. All of these here, these little nubs, are for keys in the plaster, so they'll stick up to help register it with the other parts. This part here is for the pot itself. So this is a rim here to hold excess plaster while I'm slip casting, and this here is the face of the pot. You can see that it's similar to my 3D printed one, but slightly different. This one actually has planar faces in it. So these are multiple parts so that I can get the plaster back out. So here I wanted to be able to pull the walls off and then release the plaster. We'll see how that works. When I originally designed this, I actually designed it all as one piece. And I was like, oh, I need to be able to release this. So I'm glad I caught that error and split it up into a couple pieces. This one here obviously won't hold plaster, so I have a couple of other parts here. And ignore the color difference, that doesn't mean anything. I basically printed these first and ran out of filament, so printed this one. This took a whole day to print. I think it is one of my longest 3D print jobs so far. And it went without a hitch, the 3D printing part is. There were actually a couple of errors in my modeling process. This one here has the same shapes in it as in the bottom plaster piece. So this will attach, if I get it around the right way. So that'll serve as one side of the mold. And then this piece here is just a flat piece. That'll be the other side. I'm going to pour this mold sitting this way. So the downside will be the part where the pot is. That way, hopefully any air bubbles will rise to the top and not actually be on the surface. So you notice this isn't a full pot, it's actually 1/4 of the pot. So it'll go something like this. The plaster piece that's going to be sitting right here will attach down here, and I'm going to need 4 of these. Rather than print 4 of these, I'm just going to try and reuse this mold and do 4 plaster castings out of this one mold. This piece was rather complicated to make, and I made one error that I caught already. So these rounded pieces here are key so that the plaster will sit together. You'll see that once it's been made, hopefully a little bit easier. But I noticed I actually made them with undercuts. The piece was protruding normal to this face as opposed to the normal to the release direction. So I sanded these down and used some CA glue and baking soda to fill it back up a little bit. Luckily I didn't blow through any walls completely. I just got into some of the infill. I think I've removed enough so that I won't have any undercuts now. I might require tweaking the final plaster a little bit since this is no longer a perfect shape, but that was easier than throwing away this day-long print. With all of that in place, what I'm going to do now is start casting plaster. I'm going to apply mold release to everything, and then I will use my favorite foil tape to attach all the pieces of the molds together, and then I will cast the bottom and 1 piece of the side. Once that's set, I will cast 3 more of the sides, and hopefully I will have a completed 5-piece plaster mold. Let's give it a shot. So I've been using this Murphy soap as a mold release. I'm going to apply that liberally to all the surfaces that will come into contact with the plaster. Dump some on and just start spreading it out. I made this piece symmetrical so it won't matter how I put these sides together. One other thing while I have this one out, you'll notice that there are these 3D printing artifacts. These will transfer into the clay, I'm sure. However, I think I'm going to embrace that 3D printed nature of this pot and just see how it looks. All right, I think I've got everything once. I'm going to go around and do it again. All right, next up is to use this foil tape to put the molds together. So this one will go something like that. I did have a small print failure with this one. There's a piece of support that got knocked out, so this one doesn't go all the way down, but I could just tape that together. All right, I'm going to go around off camera and tape up the rest of the seam. All right, that one is all taped up, so that should be waterproof now, or more accurately, plaster proof. Do the same for this one. So this one, the top piece should be relatively straightforward. So now this will go on right here. So the idea is that the two sides will come off and I can pull the plaster out this way. That is the plan anyways. Let's try and line up this edge here. And again, just tack it down to start. All right, I think that's that side. Now this one, same thing. Okay, and that one's all done. So you can see there's that seam right there and that seam right there that will likely leak, but not pass the tape. The molds are all prepared. I think now it is plaster time. Okay, these have set. Now the moment of truth. Let's try this one first. So this should come out from the edges. And the answer is no. It's splitting. All right, so I lost this piece. So this here separated on the layer lines. However, I really only need one of these, so that may be okay. All right, that one came out in one piece. Cool, so if I need to, I can just remake this one. Now, with any luck, it's moving. That's promising. All right, I think we just popped free. And ta-da! So that's the part that broke. So my registration pieces got a little bit damaged, but overall they seem okay. I am pretty pleased with that. Okay, so now for the one that really matters, because I need to make 4 of these. All right, that came off really easily. I had a little bit of spillage here. Be careful with these pieces here, since that's what broke on the bottom. Cool, a little bit of flash here. Ooh, it came. There we go. It's gonna do it. Here we go. All right, I definitely damaged that part, but only this here is the pot. This should fit on there, perfect. All of the important faces seem to have done okay, and I think my mold survived. So I think this is going to work. So these registration marks go and sit on here and get them lined up, just the right spot. And so now I need 3 more of these. I might make a couple more because this one barely came out. I haven't tested how they fit together on the sides yet, obviously. I'll need another one for that. So I will go ahead and reset. Make sure to wash this off and soap it up really, really good and make more of these. The bottom piece I am done with unless I want to make a copy of this mold. So we'll go ahead and do that. I will probably do it off camera unless there is something interesting that happens. Here are all the plaster molds. These have all dried and so they're nice and cured. I was able to get all 4 out of my 3D printed mold. There definitely are some problems with these, some chip outs and things on the edges, but they're all on the faces that are outside of the pot, so hopefully those won't matter. And they did indeed require a little bit of cleaning of the plaster where I needed to modify my 3D printed mold, but nothing too bad. So I've done a quick test fit that's a little bit fiddly getting all together, but it seems to be okay. So I think with that, let's assemble it and try and cast a pot. So the pieces drop into the mold like that. And you can see the seam here. There's a little bit of a gap there. It's not mating perfectly. I'm guessing my tolerances are slightly off. Okay, there it is. All 5 pieces of the 5-piece mold. I'm gonna get some rubber bands to put around that. All right, there it is all rubber band together. I am guessing this is going to leak. I think I might need to deal with these mating faces. But let's give it a shot. I have my slip here. This may not be enough, but we can at least start the pouring and then I can mix up some more. No leaks yet. And so far so good. do have enough. Oh, there's a leak coming out right there. Hopefully it will stop by itself. They don't seem to be getting bigger, so that's a good sign. All right, let's let that set for a while. Since this is my very first casting with this mold, I'm not sure exactly how long, but we'll be back to it in a little bit. This has been sitting for about 45 minutes. I'm erring on the side of a thicker wall than a thinner wall since this is my very first one. So now I'm going to dump this back into my slip bucket. All right, there we go. It is drained, so now time to let it firm up. All right, this has sat for a while. Let's go ahead and see if we can trim it up and remove it from the mold. All right, so far so good, and it looks like we have a decent wall thickness. We clearly had slip leak between the plaster segments. And we've got some serious flasher on the bottom here. That's easy enough to get rid of. All right, so here is the pot straight out of the mold. That worked actually very well. I'm going to let this firm up for a little while, then I can pick it up and show it to you guys. And here is the pot. It is now leather hard. I spent a few minutes cleaning up where all the seams were. It will probably need to be touched up again when it's a little bit more firm, but I think it's good for now. I am very pleased with how this turned out. You can see some of the artifacts from the 3D printing process. With the previous mold I made using my 3D printer, I actually primed it and sanded these out. For this one, I wanted to leave it. We can see how it turns out in the final pot. If I wanted to, I could probably sand the plaster mold and get rid of these artifacts. Or I could go back to the original 3D printed part and primer it and sand it as well, and then recast the plaster parts. I didn't get perfect alignment with my mold parts. I might go and refine the plaster to see if I can get those to seat together, but even without that alignment, this worked really well. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this process. One of the ideas was really to be able to make these molds without using silicone. And while casting out of the 3D printed part was not ideal, I think it worked okay. I think the jury's still out on if I want to continue to do this or actually invest in the silicone pieces. In the next video, I'm going to go ahead and glaze this pot and probably make a few more. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to hear from you. Thanks.